Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. It's Dave Chalmers here, Chief Commercial Officer at LMN. A couple of housekeeping items just before we begin today's presentation. If you have a question, you can use the chat window. We will receive those questions and get them to our special guest speaker throughout the presentation, and everyone will receive a copy of the recording of today's webinar. So it gives us great pleasure to introduce Peter Ginnan, CEO of Oriole Landscaping and Knowledge Tree Consulting. Peter's going to walk us through making your estimates sell themselves, which is a vital attribute given today's economy. So just a little bit of background on Peter. He co-founded the design build firm Oriole Landscaping back in 1986. Oriole quickly built a reputation of high quality work and superior customer service. Oriole has won dozens of awards in the industry, including the Casey Van Maris Award twice, which is for the most innovative design company in Ontario, and the Dunnington Grub for the best overall landscape company in Ontario, which is fantastic. Congratulations, Peter. He gives back to the industry and has certainly been a well-requested speaker, advocate, coach, advisor for the past 25 years. He served as chair of Canada Blooms, chair of the Contractors Sector Group in Ontario, currently vice president of Landscape Canada for the CNLA, and is on the board of directors for Landscape Ontario. Peter's been working with a number of parties so far this spring on a COVID-19 task force, and he's bringing a ton of guidance to all of the members and his fellow owner-operators and contractors right across the industry. So Peter, thank you so much for your time today. We're really looking forward to diving in and learning as much as we can from you today. I'll turn the controls over to you. Welcome, and you can kick it off.
Thanks, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here. I really enjoy the opportunity to speak to other professionals. It makes me a better business owner, being able to share this information. The best way to learn is to teach, and I'm grateful that that those of you that are in attendance today have chosen to hear what I have to say, and I hope I can bring some real, genuine value to each of you. Yeah. So in terms of my work, as Dave mentioned, Oriole Landscaping. I also have a construction division, solid space construction, and Knowledge Tree Consulting. And we have been in business now for 34 years, and I've learned a lot over those years. And our business has changed substantially, and the techniques I've learned some have been through other consultants, some have been through trial and error, and there's been lots of error, and we've tried lots of things, and I'm going to share with you some of those things that have worked for us. In essence, what I'd like to talk to you about today is the next step beyond the numbers. The most important thing in any business is going to be your budget, your estimates, knowing your productivity, your production rates, and keeping your business efficient. That is absolutely the most important aspect for a successful business. But you can't stop there. There's a whole other level of professionalism that you can achieve if you win those better jobs that other people are taking from you, if you have access to better projects, more sophisticated builders, architects, and they're out there and they're looking for something more than the cheapest price. And that's what I want to talk to you about, and how I use LMN to leverage my business to make sales. So after you've done all of your numbers and you've got your estimate down pat and you've got your production rates down pat, one of the last but still most important steps to a successful business is closing the sale. And I'll tell you, there's lots of ways you can close a sale. Obviously, you have to meet your client's needs. That's first and foremost. Sometimes you're the only contractor available. You're the only one who shows up for an estimate. I mean, I find that astounding, but it still happens. Sometimes you provide a unique product or service that other people can't do. If you have a particular, style of planting that nobody else can provide, then you have a unique selling position, and you have to make sure you promote that and elaborate that in your estimates. But in most instances, you will be competing with other contractors on price, quality, and service. And on a basic estimate, if 3 contractors submit 3 estimates, customer doesn't have much to go on other than your reputation, the numbers on the page, and how they feel about you. And so price is very easy to measure with against your competitors, and it's much more difficult to convey quality and service. But I've got a technique I want to share with you today to help you achieve that, so that they're not choosing solely on price. I have consistently sold projects for higher dollar values than my competitors. Some large multi-million-dollar projects where I'm hundreds of thousands of dollars higher. And the only way I can do that is by projecting my brand, which is quality and service. And I can do that through my quote oftentimes. One of the core aspects of selling your business through your quote is basically creating an open window into your operation. Clients need to feel comfortable with you. They want to have confidence that you can follow through on the product that you're selling, that your quality, that your service is what they expect, and certainly better than what your competitors are offering. Harvard Business Review research shows that restaurants with open kitchens, where the customers can see the cooks and the cooks can see the customers, has encouraged cooks to do better and for customers to have a better review of the experience in the restaurant. And I can do that through my estimates. And that is, I have created a productive, efficient operation. I've organized, I've done 5S, my staff wear uniforms. We're as professional as we can be operationally. And what I do with my estimate is I open that up to the customer. I reveal my operation, I reveal my numbers, how we build things, and we can achieve a lot of that same level of comfort that customers in this open kitchen will have with the quality of their food. And we're not afraid to charge higher amounts. We're not competing on price. Just like Apple computers doesn't compete on price. They're not necessarily the fastest computers. They don't have necessarily the biggest memory, but they consistently provide value for their customers. And if you can continue to do that, then they will keep buying. And this is not one of my trucks. This is what a lot of businesses look like to customers, where they see messy job sites. If your quote is not logical, if your estimate is confusing, or if it's lacking information, they're gonna have some doubts as to your ability to run a job site. Part of what we do is we find operational efficiencies through organization and systemization, and we want to project that to the client through our estimates. The actual landscape that we're selling is not something they can go and walk through or look at other than in a drawing, and that's hard to convey sometimes. So what we have to do is we have to create that sense of confidence in our clients through our quotes of quality and service. I think the fundamental turning point for us many years ago was realizing that clients are craving information. If you hand a client a quote that has one-line items for a patio that's 350 square feet using, a particular type of brick, that's all the information they need, really, because that's what they're going to get. But they're going to have a lot of questions, and they may have, fair questions trying to compare quotes. When you go to a dealership to get your car serviced, or you're buying a used car, there is a 200-point inspection checklist that they provide. And I didn't even know there were 200 things to check on a car. They're answering questions I didn't even know to ask. When I take my car in for service and they do a multi-point inspection, I don't have to second guess. Are they going to check the brakes? Are they going to check the transmission fluid? I don't have to. I have confidence that when they go through this list, that they're going to achieve all of those important milestones that obviously I require and I expect from them for that service. And that's something that you can do in your quote. Obviously, a checklist like this is pretty dry and it isn't really sexy enough to sell a landscape, but it does show how the work can be done methodically, and that's what we've learned to do through our estimating. So we do that by building our templates. Our templates are a specific structured process of all the materials we need, the labor required through our production calculators, and a description of the process. And putting all of the information of our process in that template in client notes, we're able to convey to the crew, firstly, which is why we did it in the first place, is to make sure our crews built it properly and consistently. Every job, every patio needs, excavation. We need to find solid subbase. All of these things are obvious to a landscaper, but we have new staff sometimes that join a crew, and we want to make sure that they, like the 200-point checklist, that they hit all of those points. We show that to the client in the client notes. The client knows what to expect, that we're doing this, our own 200-point checklist when we're building their landscape, that we're not going to miss anything. And we're answering questions that they don't even know to ask. They probably don't know what proctor density is, that, compacting it to achieve a certain level, if you need 98% on the contract, that's great, but, they wouldn't know to ask that. But we're already answering those questions for them. And I'm going to share with you a quote that I did this spring. And this project here, I just printed it recently. We have our estimates set up with our logo and that on it. We do, at the beginning of every job, we'll address tree protection zones if required. And we talk about all the nitty-gritty details. In the city of Toronto, we have very specific requirements from urban forestry, and we list all of those. I don't have to type this up every time I do a quote. That would be excruciatingly slow, and I may miss things. So we create this description in our template. So when we add a template to our quote, it's automatically generated for us. All I have to do in the actual quote itself is add the amount of hoarding I need and the hours required. Mobilization, we do this for every job. I don't have to write all of these items out. You know, there's a lot of things we do. Now, some of them actually don't cost us money. Like in Ontario, we have to get a notice of project. It costs $0 to get it, but it's an action item that we have to do, so I don't want to miss it. It's an action item that the client maybe didn't know to ask about, but it's providing additional value. Utility locates, portable washroom, on-site mobilization, all these things are, it would be a pain in the neck to have to populate this in your quote every time. But the more information I put in here, the more words, you know, valuable words, but the more words you have, the more confidence the client will have that you're following a methodical, professional, and complete process. And I go into jobs and I lay out a 14-page quote for a client, and I'm competing against somebody who's got a 2-page quote or a 1-page quote, and they're like, they're going to have to ask a lot of questions of this other guy. Well, are you getting a notice of project? Are you doing all your utility locates? It's not a line item for price, but it's definitely a question that if they see my quote, they're going to wonder, is the other guy even going to complete all of this stuff? And we go through, I mean, this, like I said, this quote, several pages. It talks about all of our processes, you know, driveway with precast pavers. We talk about the excavation that's required. We talk about conduits under the driveway, gravel. These are, and we do it in a stepwise process. So this describes our process to our crew, but it also describes our process to the customer and gives them a lot of confidence, right down to project closeout, like we did with our mobilization. Every job has project closeout. Some people don't add this on to their job. You just assume you're going to clean up at the end of your project, but we add this as an extra item because it is extra value. We'll power wash the property when we're done. And by writing it out and describing all of the things we do for that, we justify the value in our price, and clients buy that. They love that. They love the idea that we'll have a professional, clean, organized process.
Peter,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
just gonna jump in with a question that came in on the chat. And by the way, thanks for sharing a real life quotation. Certainly would agree. Very, very, very professional, and I love how you have described the importance of the detail, not just necessarily to support the price, but to completely differentiate your service offering against the competitors, right? You certainly look incredibly more complete. So the question is, Peter, do you manage all of the estimates? Are you the only one that does estimates, or has this templated structure allowed you to build confidence in having others do estimates, or are you the only one?
I do the fewest estimates now in our company. My business partner, George, and I developed all these templates, and by doing so, having production rate calculators and pre-populated templates, our design staff are able to complete these estimates, build these estimates on their own. We do double check estimates. We always have a two-person verification. If somebody did takeoffs improperly, or if they missed something that the client requested, we want to make sure we catch that before it goes out the door. But in terms of the building of the estimates, the words are the same in every estimate. So there are 6 people in my office that are capable and skilled at producing these estimates, and all of our estimates appear the same to our clients and to our crews. So there's consistency, there's very few surprises, and that makes it much easier for us. And then I can double check an estimate I've met the client, I know what they want, I'll double check the estimate to make sure that the designer or the project manager hasn't missed anything. And same for George. So yeah, I don't have to do them anymore. But yeah, it makes it a lot easier for sure.
Fantastic. Yeah, great. Thanks, Peter.
And the other type of work we do is tender build. And I just want to touch on how I can use my LMN estimates to give me a leg up on tender build projects. And I have a sample from a landscape architect that we received last year, and we submit our estimate, and we use LMN as an addendum to their tender, so that we answer questions that they wouldn't even know to ask. And I'm going to share with you a sample of this, and I've blocked out his name. Some of you in Ontario may recognize the template, but that's not important. There's a lot of things that an architect will do. They look very thorough, and they're very formal, and you have to fill out all of their information to have a formal bid. You have to complete all of the information. But my quotes are more complete than these tender forms, and they will protect me against missed items, and they will give me more credibility if I'm asking for more money for an item. If I'm doing more than what was asked, and the architect recognizes that that would be an extra afterwards, then again, it gives me a differentiation against my competitors. So I put a few notes in here. There's a few simple things. If you get a tender from an architect and they slide in a harmless word called permits into their blanket item 1 to furnish all materials and incidentals, including permits, that is in Ontario, that is a minefield. You could be in permit applications for years in between our tree permits, our ravine permits, our conservation authority permits, our building permits. It's seemingly endless sometimes. So I always exclude permits from my lump sum prices. That'd be a horrible minefield right there. I offer to do permits, time, and materials. Personally, I think the architect is better suited for applying for all of those, but be careful. Project management. So yeah, just make sure that you document all of your work, especially when you're working for an architect, that communication is documented and tracked, and you get sign-offs on change orders. Because an architect who may have missed a step off of the back patio, and they say, yeah, go ahead and do it, and you do it and didn't get a change order signed, whose fault is it that it was missed, right? Is it the contractor who said he would do the stairs and not specifically 6 steps? You know, who pays for the 7th step? And it could be very confusing and expensive if you miss things. So just be careful with your paperwork. But more importantly, with the templates, this is what I wanted to get to, the meat of my presentation today as well, is things like demolition removals and grading as required. It's another minefield. So my quotes in my templates that I've had, I have a line to specify the exact depth of excavation that I'm including. If additional excavation is required because there's poor subsoil, then I can go back to my quote and say, well, I've only priced for doing 12 inches or 16 inches of excavation. If you have soft subsoil, or if there was something unknown buried, then you're not giving a blanket, you know, all excavation included. And they don't have room to write all that out in their tender forms. But in my quote, my LMN quote, it's described in much more detail, and I make sure it's an addendum on these tenders. Driveway precast. So again, I don't know how some of you have, we all have different ways of building, but make sure your way of building, the way that you're comfortable building, is included in describing your work. And I can do that in my templates. I prefer doing interlock on a base that has cement in it. In our area, we call it ultra base, which is like a permeable concrete subbase, which reduces service calls for me. And that's added value for the client. My price might be higher for interlock than my competitors, but if I can describe it properly in my template, then I will justify that extra cost, and clients will pay extra if they know they're going to get something. That you know, how many interlock jobs have you priced where the client asks, you know, will it have wheel ruts in it? Like that's the way all interlock looked back in the late 80s and early 90s. They all got wheel ruts in them, and this ultra base eliminates that risk. So clients will ask. If you don't tell them in your template, they will ask, and you'll have to talk your way out of it. Stone treads and risers. Again, this is another horrible point. So they've asked for a linear foot price to repair a foundation. Don't do it. Linear foot, square foot pricing is risky at best. We do time and materials, and we have our time and material template set up where it describes all of our services and what all our costs are. So on an item like this, I will drop in my T&M rates, my T&M template, and I'll insist that the client agree to T&M rates only for something like this, which is just it could be a disaster. Do not offer to fix anyone else's garbage for a fixed price. That would be a mistake you'll regret. Yeah, and then the last point is just in Ontario, we have a new Construction Act. Be familiar with your construction law in your jurisdiction. It is, it's different everywhere, obviously, but you don't want to have to learn what is in your contract when you're having trouble collecting money, because then it might be too late. And in an Ontario where we work, there are strict timelines in terms of when you have to have paperwork submitted, when you have to have applications for a lien on the property submitted. And if you miss those, you're out and you're at the mercy of the courts. So those are just a few points that we use our LMN quotes to make a better presentation. And clients, they eat it up. They know that we are going to be more thorough than our competitor because we're more thorough on our quotes, and that's what I want to bring to basically a call to action. I don't want to waste your time, so I've kept this fairly brief. And if you've learned anything, then I want to make sure you know that building your templates is going to make a world of difference on selling your jobs. So if you can start building your templates on the areas that you repeat most often, so mobilization, excavation, you're doing that on every job, make sure those are accurate and thorough. And that piece of paper that you hand the client, sometimes that's the only thing they have when it comes down to comparing you and your competitors. So make sure that they have something to read there. Describe the process like you use like you're teaching a brand new employee. So describe it in detail. There's things in my estimates that are obvious to a landscaper, but they're not obvious to a customer. And so act as if you're teaching a new employee. List all your materials in your template so it shows up on site. Obviously, Building your templates properly is going to be key to your crew's success as well, and that's where we started with our templates. You know, pave edge and spikes in your template, because having them drive back to the yard to get spikes is a painful waste of time. And for the clients, they will see that a lot more goes into your work than just 800 square feet of brick. And that will help them understand the value that you're providing. And ultimately, what works for us is our clients see the thoroughness of our estimates as a character trait that matches our brand when we're on site. So our job sites are organized, it's methodical. We're not walking around the job site scratching our head because our crews have their custom job planners with all the materials listed, the description of the work process, and I think they work together, and that's how we sell jobs. And that's a point of this presentation, is how we use that organized advantage in our office and our estimating and our budgeting, and we've put that into our estimate that we present to the client, and that our confidence in our numbers is what instills confidence from the customer. So yeah, I hope that helps those of you that are watching. I hope some of you have been using templates, but now you'll understand how they can be a real sales tool and a real differentiator. And I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer questions. And we'll keep improving. That's the other thing that we love to do, is always find new ways to be better. So thanks again for listening, and it was a pleasure.
That's great, Peter. Thank you so much. There was a question that did come in at the end. You touched on it a little bit, but if you could help the audience understand a little bit more around the strategy of your delivery. So let's just make an assumption that we have our templates built, things are complete, they're very professional, very thorough. What's your approach in helping to actually now close all of the hard work that you've done with this, building this estimate? Is it you only deliver this in an in-person meeting? Is it you send an email and then you book a meeting to go through everything? What, generally speaking, has been a best practice that you've enjoyed over the course of the last few decades in now closing that estimate?
So more often than not, we prefer an in-person presentation. We have our ability to convey our process to the customer, and knowing our numbers as well as we do, does instill confidence in the customer, and confidence is contagious. So our confidence in our numbers definitely resonates with our customers. However, for the last 2 months, we have not been able to have nearly the same amount of customer interaction. We've done a lot more work, and this is something we're learning now, as well as how to get this information to our customers in a productive way, so that they still have that same sense of confidence in us. We're still selling jobs. We have clients where I might see them once at an appropriate distance, and then we do the design work, we do the estimate, and we present the estimate virtually, and we're getting deposit checks from clients for work to be done later this year into the fall. So I know it does work. It's a bit different for us, but that is another reason why I am more passionate about the importance of your estimate. Without being able to present in person as often, I rely more on that as a document to support my brand. And it's working. So I'd say that's a new confidence that I have in that estimate.
That's great. That's great. One last question, Peter. Is there a revenue threshold where you make the determination this one is not an in-person meeting? Above this threshold it is, or do you just have as many in-person meetings as possible? Realize that COVID has changed things a little bit, but you try and present every one of your estimates, or is there a threshold where you don't with some?
So it really depends on the client. I have one we signed up last week. The client it's a phenomenal project. It's in Toronto. It's a premium property. It's a beautiful site, but the client isn't available. I did everything by electronically, and they signed up. So I prefer to do in person. Certainly, the initial meeting I prefer to do in person, because I mean they're interviewing me, but I am also interviewing the client. There's a lot of horrible people out there, and knowing who is going to be respectful of your business and the work that you do is important. And that's still unfortunately that's something that's hard to screen in an email. And so I do have to meet them. It's especially if the job is over my minimum threshold, and it'll be different for different types of businesses, but I definitely want to have a feel for the customer's personality to make sure that I'm not going to have a customer who's never happy or is unreasonable or is trying to get something for nothing. And there are a lot of those people out there. And after 34 years, we've done a pretty good job of screening those people. And by working for decent customers, they refer you to more decent customers. They have there's a way to get into good work, but if you do a cheap job, you'll get more cheap jobs. And we've slowly distilled our clientele to just the cream of the crop, luckily in Toronto. So
No, that's excellent. Great summary, Peter. Obviously, from many years of experience, but sage advice for all of our listeners. Peter, thank you again for your time. We know your calendar is very busy these days. Appreciate you spending a few moments sharing some best practices and guidance with us today. One closing slide. Again, we'll make sure that everybody receives a recording of the webinar today. Online education, a significant goal of ours at LMN. We've moved all of our in-class workshops online for greater access. Our online academy continues to provide companies with incredible education to help staff achieve goals, whether that be in helping to take these amazing estimates that Peter has outlined for us today, close them and schedule them, through to tracking all of the overhead and costs associated with those estimates so that you can be as profitable as possible. We're really all about trying to support everybody in the industry right now. We know that there are still some shelter-ins. There's some doors being opened in many states and provinces at different levels. And we want to make sure that everybody has access to not only incredible industry speakers like Peter, but module-based videos and training that we've set up as well. So thank you everyone for attending today. That concludes our webinar with Peter, and we hope you have an amazing rest of this week and a strong month of May. Cheers.
thanks.